Get it all out. Achoo. All right. Oh, I kind of clipped it a little bit there, so I'm going to move back a bit. All right. Woo! All right.
Woo! Wiki wah wah, wiki wah 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 west.
That was too much of a woo. I apologize.
All right, cool.
Hang on. Wait. Woo!
Woo!
Okay, I'm ready.
Hello and welcome to another fantastic episode of Creature Club, your personal favorite podcast, Bob. In this show...
I love Bob. He's such a great listener.
He's a great listener. Very engaging. But today, on Creature Club, the show where we talk about the monsters of the 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons Monster Manual, we're going to be talking about a rather popular and rather widely known character, the Centaur. And as usual, we will be talking about their history and lore in Dungeons & Dragons and outside of Dungeons & Dragons. And then we'll be moving on to the current edition and its stat block. And then beyond that, we'll be talking about how we use them in encounters or how we consider them to be interesting or fantastical or useful in other situations.
I am Mikey DC.
No, you're not.
And I'm Daniel White.
Sorry.
I think.
Should I introduce you?
It's too late. We've introduced
Oh,
ourselves.
dang.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
We
This is gonna
are
be left
seizing
in.
control of the podcast.
Yeah.
We are the
Yeah.
horizontal and the vertical.
Assuming direct control.
And
When you didn't say our names, I was like,
Yeah,
what
sorry.
do we do?
and I'm Tim, just for the record, the one over here with the
Hey,
voice.
Tim. Yeah. Tim's sitting over on the other side of the room, and me and Dan are kind of sitting on a couch.
It's all true.
You look
The
far
couch.
more comfortable than I do, but someone had to take control and be in the uncomfortable seat because you sound
true,
much more authoritative in this big nice seat. Anyway, we're getting
Anyway,
sidetracked.
God, we're talking about the Centaur. If you're not aware what a Centaur looks like, it is a person and a horse combined. So the neck and head of the horse are replaced with the torso and arms and head of a person, and the bottom half is just all horse. They're in a lot of things. I mean, I would say the obvious thing is stuff like Harry Potter and Greek myth.
Yeah.
So I think between those two, you've probably got about 100% of the population covered.
Yeah.
What's the centaur's name in Harry Potter again? Is it like Friend or something?
I think it's called Faust or something like that.
It's what?
Faust, maybe?
It's not Faust, Tim.
No.
Let me
Not
just have
Faust,
the
yeah?
Faust.
Faust
me
is
just have
a
a look.
character who made a deal with the devil. Like, it's not...
Yeah, that sounds right.
Harry Potter Centaur. Yeah, it's the first one that came up. They knew I was searching it up.
Yeah, perfect.
Firenze.
Firenze.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so it sounds like Friend. but
Yeah,
it's
and the Friends
yeah.
is also a kind of Italian painting that I learned about in the Renaissance, but I
Okay.
could be wrong. But moving on quickly, the Centaur has a lot of lore. It's as old as Greek myth. So, Tim, do you want to speed round us through that?
Sure. So the Centaur has origin just about everywhere. Like, there's a lot of theories as to exactly where they're from, but nobody has any specific idea. There are some theories that they came from people's reaction to seeing nomads who were mounted on horses in cultures where people didn't think to just jump on a horse, you know? Like, they'd see a person riding a horse and go, why is that person attached to that horse? So, you know, that makes the most sense to me of what I read into. But there's also theories of, like, the kind of more conspiratorial ones of, ooh, they were aliens and we wiped them out and this, that, and the other. But a lot of it is just derived from various mythologies. The Aztecs thought similarly, and there are some depictions of them from Kazakhstan and early Minoan stuff. So it's pretty broad, kind of all over the place.
Wow.
Yeah.
I didn't realize it was in as many places as it was. I kind of...
Yeah.
But that does make a lot of sense. On that subject, sorry, when you said that people didn't understand the idea of riding horses, there's that story that's probably allegorical, but it's the first time that camels were brought to England. Have you heard this?
No?
They were paraded. Obviously, the ship arrived in port, and everyone, gathered to see what they had. And they brought out these camels, and someone in the crowd yelled, "What have they done to those horses?"
They put a lump on them.
because they just didn't understand that like other animals could look like that. Like would have the same kind of body structure.
Well, it's kind of a similar idea, I suppose. Like somebody would be surprised to see that because it's so bizarre, you know. Like
Yeah, and I guess if you think about the idea that they would shoot arrows at you or maybe throw spears and then run away, and you looked at them as they were running away, you would only see a horse's body and a human torso blocking the horse's head. So in D&D, they do exactly what you'd expect. They show up in every version of the game. They start out in the OD&D supplement Greyhawk, although in that they are literally just listed as a monster you could fight. And by that I mean like if you scrolled into a big list of every type of monster that you could fight and the type of damages they do, this is where they show up. And it just says that a centaur attacks with 2 hooves and with 1 weapon. And that's it.
Cool. Just 2 hooves?
2 hooves. So the idea is it kicks you with its front hooves and then like stabs you with a spear or shoots you with a bow or something.
it doesn't have like a back-legged kick like you'd expect from a horse.
Yeah, kick like a horse. Yeah, good point.
If you get a surprise round, they get to kick you in the face. Yeah.
And then other than that, they show up in other editions of the game. There's a lot of different kinds of centaurs, as you would expect, like ones that are based in like for example, the sea centaur, the desert centaur, the nomadic centaur, the Abnessinian centaur, the
Yes.
the Crystallamere centaur, the Endscape centaur. Yeah, there's a lot of centaurs, but those different ones I listed there are just from different parts of the world. Because it lists, for example, like the Wendell, the Endscape, and this Crystal Mirror are just like different locations in Dragonlance, basically. At least based on my limited understanding of Dragonlance.
Sure.
There was also other monsters like the Wemmick, which was the which is the same idea as a centaur, except swap out the horse bits with lion bits, and things like that. It's certainly cool, and you could use those in places where you might run into lions more than you run into horses, for example. Like
I feel like it would probably be a little bit more off balance because, like, with the horse's body, their like neck and head is pretty pronounced. You know, like it's much longer, whereas for like a lion or a tiger or whatever, their necks are quite stout and they're very low to the ground. I feel like a human sticking out of that would just look odd.
I presume you just shrink the human bit though.
Yeah, possibly.
Or lengthen the legs so it's more like a centaur, like the legs are a little longer.
Stouter, I suppose.
Or get the torso and put it in the middle of the body, and then it's in the middle of the balance. And it's also much more awful to look at.
Yeah.
So bonus, I guess.
And spoilers, Tim, they do look weird and awful, actually.
Yeah, they do. Sorry, by the way.
All right. I'll look them up later and have some nightmares.
They just look a bit angry. I would be too if I was half lion.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's their history. They have showed up a few times as player races, including we have a version here from D&D Beyond. So we have someone's homebrew for playing a centaur in 5e, which we'll go over. But before we go any further, do we want to let our audience peek behind the curtain and see the dark truth?
Oh, what's this? Oh,
Which is just that we don't really care about the centaur.
Yeah. We actually we were talking about it before recording. We're just like, this fucking guy.
Yeah. I kind of posed the question and I was like, so what do you guys think about the centaur? There was a palpable pause. And I was like, like, none of us are particularly excited about it because they are kind of iconic and everybody knows what a centaur is, but like,
have you guys looked at a centaur recently? They are so doofy. Like
they are actually. You know what I realized? It would be like if the monster manual had like dwarves in it. You know what I mean? You'd be like, this shouldn't be in here.
Yeah. But just like, if you really just take a second and look at a centaur, and just take a few minutes to look at it, it's
really
just
breathe it in.
Yeah, it's just weird. It's such a weird concept.
But it's not even like completely bizarre. Just like as monsters go, putting a human body on a horse's or a human body on a horse's body, I suppose, it isn't too far fetched. But it's just they're not especially threatening. They're not particularly exciting. Like a horse is a pretty tame animal to begin with, and humans, while weird, we are them. So you know.
Yeah, and Also, in pretty much every piece of media that I know that about centaurs, they're always portrayed as like, we are the noble race of centaurs.
Yeah, God, they're the exact same. They're like the noble nomads who love the forest and hate the intervention of humans. And
Yeah,
they don't really like you, but if you're honorable, they'll be like, no, we respect you, and then they'll do the fist bump or whatever. And like, it's the fucking same beats in every story.
That's a little bit contrasting to some of the original depictions. Originally, in some of the earlier Greek stuff, they were portrayed as like drunkards and practically jesters. Like they're wild and kind of they fought. They were the drunks essentially. Like they wanted to get into fights and stuff. But kind of in later pop culture, as it were, kind of 18th century, they started kind of depicting them as these noble creatures with like kind of portraying the idea that the human side, the prouder, nobler side had taken over, as opposed to the animalistic kind of horsey side of them. The baser instinct of the man was kind of taken over by his want to share experience essentially with humans.
That makes sense, and also lines up with the idea that like horse riding would as time goes on and even now is increasingly something, well, like a little less so now, but certainly more so kind of 18th to the 20th century. Horse riding is a noble pursuit. It's like something that someone who is in a position of privilege can do because they have the money to afford horses and a place to keep them and a place to run them and food and etc. etc. So that would be like associated with like estates and wealth. So obviously those people who have the money and also are smart enough to ride will go like, oh, well, of course, if something's half horse and horses are so great and noble because we ride them, then the centaur must be noble.
Yeah. Whereas back in the day, they had like wild horses and that was about it.
you had to go and tame the horses yourself if you wanted them. And you were like, these horses are a pain in the butt. I'm going to write stories about them.
Yeah. like I think to her credit, J.K. Rowling wrote some relatively interesting stuff about them. Like they lived in the Forbidden Forest in near Hogwarts, and they basically were keepers of the forest and they defended it. And they were a little bit animalistic, but they were also quite proud and a little bit kind of like they stayed away from people, you know? Like, and that was, I think, the best way that she could have used them, because writing any more than that, it gets difficult. They just get boring, you know?
Well, I mean, are you remembering the bit where the centaur becomes the teacher for a while?
No.
Yeah, he's a professor of divination, according to my Harry Potter wiki I just looked up a few minutes ago.
Oh, right.
Yeah, there's the bit where he becomes one of the centaurs lets Harry ride on his back to get him to safety.
Yeah,
and you're not supposed to do that as a centaur. You're not supposed
to he's never read Hooves of Fury.
He's never read Hooves of Fury. Thank you, DC. So he gets like kicked out of the tribe, and then he becomes a teacher in Hogwarts as a result.
Yeah.
But yeah, why don't you read that quote, because you kind of
yes, I realized that we talked about it beforehand, and add a context for people. It's just weird. Yeah, there's a little quote here that says, "I hear centaurs make excellent mounts." And that's from Batley Summerfoot, a halfling adventurer who never read Hooves of Fury by Ervil Greyborn of Sundown.
I mean, like, who hasn't read Hooves of Fury
by Ervil Greyborn of Sundown?
I mean, come on.
Can I point out something?
Mm-hmm.
Like,
shoot.
Is it weird that the game makes it like? Is it weird that the game is like, you don't want to ride a centaur? And even if that's something that I think, like, what do you guys think? Because I was just thinking, isn't it weird that you think it's weird to ride a centaur, but you'll ride a dragon when a dragon is like older and smarter than a centaur?
Yeah,
maybe
just because they don't have a people half.
Yeah, maybe there's like it could be just like a cultural thing, maybe with centaurs.
Yeah,
you can maybe add that in there.
Possibly.
I'm just digging.
Yeah, I think we're kind of a little bit of a loss for words exactly for like what to think about the centaur with regards.
Well, why don't we jump into the lore in the 5th edition book, and we can confront our own hatred in time, our burning hatred.
It's definitely. It's not exactly a burning hatred, just more of a burning indifference.
Yeah.
Actually, which is much worse. If we hated it, we could probably make some funny things with that. Okay, so very briefly, because we've actually covered a lot of this ground already, centaurs are reclusive. They prefer to live in the wilds. They stick to their own tribes of people, but they might also get on with, say, elves or other fae that live in the wild as well. They're nomadic by nature, so they travel all the time. They don't have fixed settlements. It describes that they're in this book. It describes that they're like as they travel, they're kind of like routes that they take decades and decades to finish. So they might go like up and down the length of entire continents, for example.
Yeah.
And the problem is that as a result, because it takes them so long to travel anywhere, by the time they arrive somewhere, new settlers may have settled that ground, which will then bring them into conflict with the Centaurs, which is, in fairness, a great hook, a really straightforward hook, where the Centaurs are frustrated, and you can understand why, but they're still in the wrong.
Yeah.
But they're not like, we're evil and we're going to beat you up. They're more like, this is our home, you can't live here, that kind of thing.
They're kind of like the really annoying person where like they come home after buying some like a chocolate or something, and they leave it in the fridge just hoping that no one's gonna steal it, and then somebody eats it and then they give out to the person who's like, well, you left it in the fridge, come on, man.
What a very
On a
specific
more
situation,
global
Tim.
scale. My little brother stole the chocolate bar. Yeah, I'm the Centaur in that situation, but it is a very good hook, I think, as you say, Daniel. Like, they'll settle somewhere and then they'll move on their pilgrimage or what's it called?
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
It's it's not a pilgrimage, it's just a migration.
Migration, of course.
Yep.
Yeah. Continents
It could be a
into
pilgrimage, that could be interesting, but we'll get to that.
Yeah.
And then it talks about how it has a really long passage, which I honestly think is kind of boring, which is just about how if settlers can't keep up with this migration, then they get left behind and then they're on their own. And they either basically continue to be a nomad, but they're alone, or more often, apparently, and I think this is kind of weird, apparently more often they settle down. So I guess maybe the idea is that they want a community, so they'll settle down in a pinch if they can't just stick with a moving community.
Yeah. Which actually, I kind of like. I kind of like the idea of like a lone centaur, or like one or two centaurs in a settlement of other people, or kind of like a drifter.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah.
Instead of like, I don't like a tribe or a group of centaurs because it's a little bit silly, but like a lone centaur is pretty cool, I think.
That might lend itself to their origin, the kind of classical guy, the guy who is the kind of town drunk. Like he's been left behind by his tribe, so he basically lands in this village, and then he works for them, and then he gets paid, and then he just drinks.
Yeah, I mean, because as we'll get to, centaurs are fairly tough. They're pretty resilient, and they are pretty good fighters naturally. Like, if we assume that the stat line here represents kind of just an adult centaur, not necessarily even like their best soldier, then it's reasonable to assume that anyone who is traveling and therefore has kind of this, wilderness skill set, and also has survived the rough of traveling, living on the road, that like they would be valuable to a town of normal people as someone to protect them, but also maybe who knows a little bit about the areas and even knows about places who the normal village folk have never been, like where they, it just has a wider view of the world, and that can be very valuable.
Yeah, totally.
But it takes like 2 long paragraphs, and I have no idea why. Seriously, there's very little information there.
Very little.
So we jump right into our dinner.
I think so.
Might as well. Let's do it.
We've kicked the hell out of the entrees. So
we just punched their entrees.
Yeah, basically.
Well,
the soup arrived, and I just punched the soup, and now my hands are burned. So.
Yeah,
jeez.
They're all burned and soupy.
Oof!
Let's take
quick,
the
get the
train
butter
to Dinner Town.
Hey guys, it's good for you. It's good for you to come to Dinner Town with me.
Oh well, Mikey.
You've made it weird now. I don't want to come.
I'm instantly leaving.
we know you like coming here, Mikey. So let's have a good time here.
All right. So the Centaur, he's a large monstrosity because it's
it's not a human.
horse.
It's not a giant. It's not a dragon.
And it's a horse, and horses are large. So neutral good. Yep. Okay, so he's neutral good. You probably wouldn't be fighting it too much if it's a good thing, but whatever. Armor class 12, hit points 45,
Pretty
speed
good.
50. Pretty good.
Faster than a party. Makes sense. The 50 feet, by the way, is as fast as a draft horse.
Okay.
Which is, so in the player's handbook, it describes 2 books. I'm going to start over. In the player's handbook, it describes 2 horses you can buy, like 2 mounts you can use, and one of them is a draft horse, which moves at 50 feet, and the other one is a riding horse, which moves at 75 feet. And the idea is that a draft horse is like the kind of horse that would like pull plows or like help out around the farm, whereas a riding horse is more like someone that like a messenger might use, like a horse that a messenger might use, or even like light cavalry in battle might use them.
And if you wanted to make like a elite centaur, then throw that 70 feet on him. You know?
Make it faster. Yeah, that's true.
Exactly. Okay, so he has 18 strength, 14 dex, 14 con, 9 intelligence, 13 whiz, and 11 charisma. So a basic stat.
So yeah, he's kind of he's basically got a player stat line.
Yeah.
He's a big, strong boy, which lends itself to his, strong as a horse. I suppose it's strong as an ox.
Yeah, good point.
As the saying goes,
as the saying goes, strong as a horse person. Strong as a centaur. So then it actually is trained in 3 skills, which is pretty good. It's trained in athletics, perception, and survival, all of which are obviously very, very useful skills. Those are probably amongst the 3 most useful skills in the game. And in fairness, with the exception of maybe perception, oh, that's a weird sentence. With the exception of it, maybe like the other 2 make a lot of sense. Athletics and survival being kind of like, knowing how to move fast and travel, and then also knowing your way around the wild. Perception is just a great skill to give monsters because it makes life hard for the rogue, which otherwise it would be boring if they could always disappear. Misappear. Passive perception 13. The languages. Now, this is something that I love. The languages Elvish and Sylvan.
Nice.
So, first of all, it doesn't speak Common. I'm a big fan of stuff like that because it immediately means there's a language barrier in place. There's not, because in a party of 4 players, you're almost certainly going to have an elf or a half elf, or just like the player who just has like 6 languages.
Yeah, or somebody who can put on their hat of
languages, or even a druid or a ranger who has Sylvan instead, which would be very reasonable. So there's a lot of ways that the party could communicate with this person. But that doesn't mean it's irrelevant. But I still, the very cool thing, obviously, is that immediately it creates a language barrier, and this is going back to that conflict you described earlier. There's a language barrier between a normal person and a centaur, because it's reasonable to assume that a villager speaks Common and probably nothing else.
Yeah.
Whereas like centaur does not. So immediately so what's cool there is that there's a great opportunity here to have the players, rather than acting as violent belligerents who show up and kill the problem, they're intermediaries, because they're the only people in town who can understand both the centaurs and the townsfolk.
That's a good thought.
So they get to play a slightly different role, which is actually kind of cool.
Yeah.
Which you got yourself. You have yourself an adventure hook there, but a non-violent adventure hook, which is pretty cool.
Which is
having a couple
cool.
of those. Yeah.
And then in the final boss fight, they can summon the centaurs as a sort of a one-off summon to deal extra damage to the boss.
Yes, that'll be good. Yeah.
And then it's a challenge rating 2 monster, so it's the same challenge rating as the carrion crawler from last week. So that means that it's appropriate for a level 2 party.
Which we might do who will win, carrion crawler or centaur. That would actually be a fun sideshow. Putting monsters up against each other might be silly, but we'll think about that.
Who will win?
Okay, so it has 1 special ability, which is Charge, which is if it moves at least 30 feet towards the thing it's attacking, it deals an extra 3d6 damage.
Yeah, makes sense.
It's only with the pike. It only gets to deal that extra damage with its pike. So in other words, if it tries to run you through, it gets bonus damage.
Tries to joust with you.
It's very reasonable to say that if you want to give your centaurs other weapons, that you could just replace the pike with one of those, like even the sword that it has in the art that it doesn't have in the stat line, or any other melee weapon like a great axe or a maul.
Probably a halberd
like
would probably most suited to a centaur. More so
or a
even
glaive,
than
guys.
A normal person. A what?
Or a glaive.
A glaive.
Or a glaive,
Ooh,
guys. Yeah.
That's a nice one.
And then it has some actions. Do you boys want to shoot them with your mouth guns?
Or
I'm sorry.
I don't want to anymore. I was going to.
That is an interesting image.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's a bad image. I didn't get a lot of sleep last night.
It's very bad. This is a bad podcast. Okay, so multi-attack. The centaur makes 2 attacks, one with its pike and one with its hooves, or 2 with its longbow. Can I do that one again? Okay, go. Multi-attack. The centaur makes 2 attacks, one with its pike and one with its hooves, or 2 with its longbow.
Which makes sense, I think.
Yeah, it does. So yeah, he has a pike. He has a hooves, and he has a longbow. So
he has a hooves.
Yeah, which I kind of I don't know why they didn't give him too many more like feats and stuff to do with archery, because I always thought centaurs were kind of classically the archers of like mythology, you know?
Like, I think most of the problem for like riding a horse and doing archery is that you're not used to the kind of undulation of the horse underneath you, whereas a centaur has been that its entire life. It knows how it moves, and it will be able to like adjust its aim accordingly. Like, it should be much more advanced in longbow, whereas its dex score is, its dex bonus is literally half of its strength, you know?
Yeah. But if you want to make him more of an archer guy, then just like maybe swap that dex and strength just over.
Yeah, maybe.
Could be an idea.
Or do what we saw last week with the carrion crawler, where they just added a bonus to the attack roll for the tentacles.
Yeah.
You could just you could just decide, okay, well, I want the centaur to be better with bows than with hooves, so I'll just add, +3 to ranged attacks, and then it's very accurate with its bow, and that feels pretty cool, and then it's a little better than it is with its other weapons. But you still don't have to worry about recalculating dex and armor and saving throws and blah blah blah.
Yeah, we probably got some a bit of inspiration we can go with from the 4E guys. So will we have a look at them?
Sure.
Yeah, sure.
Jump on in.
I will. I'll just kind of read out the little flavor bits, because once again 4E is a different game. But we have the Centaur Hunter. He's kind of the first guy, and he actually has a lot of bow stuff. So he has like lightning fast shots, charger arrow, and triple shot. Ooh. Once again, they're all like D&D 4E stuff, but that's kind of and also a close combat archer, which might be a thing to bring in, where when he makes range attacks, the Centaur Hunter does not provoke opportunity attacks from the targets. So that can be something to throw in. There is the Centaur Ravager. A Ravager delights in battle and is overcome by a mixture of ecstasy and rage when fighting. All right, that's fine.
Sounds like a berserk to me.
Yep, just a berserker centaur. There you go. Berserk centaur guy. That's all you need. Centaur Mystic. Ooh, this one is... This is something. A Centaur Mystic advises its tribe about the ways of nature and about their duties to the spirits of their ancestors. It possesses magic power that stems from both the wilderness and spirited realm. And the spirit realm. Centaur Druid. There you go.
A magic boy.
For the record, all these centaurs, I just realized, the thing you mentioned, Tim, all of these centaurs have a special ability called Quick Kick, which is a reaction if a creature tries to flank the centaur.
Yeah.
So if you try to go behind a horse,
it
kicks you.
That's cool. That's good.
So I think full stop steal that. The first time someone in the party tries to flank the centaur or try to like surround them, they just get kicked in the face. Yeah. And it's like, it's a horse. What did you expect?
Yeah. Like, if you sneak up on a horse, they're going to kick you in the face. So, give them that much. Like, even if you get a surprise round, they should get a reaction, essentially.
Well, it's just instinctual. They're not even trying to do it. It's just like, ah.
Yeah. Makes sense to me.
There is the Centaur Fey Charger. A Fey Charger brings the power of storms to bear against its enemies. He seems to just run into you with like a storming charge. He's kind of like a charger guy.
Because stampeding horses do kind of sound very thunderous, which I think is actually cool. That's
literally has an ability called Thunder Hooves.
Yeah, that is definitely like, I think that's the coolest thing we're probably going to be able to find about this, because I just suddenly was like, that's awesome.
Yeah, if you have like a player character in your party who's a centaur, and Thunder Hooves is like a great like nickname for him. Like,
all right, Thunder Hooves, get over here.
Hey, Thunder Hooves, get over here.
My name is Matthew.
Stab of Lightning is a good attack. It's yeah. And there's, at last but not least, is the Centaur Campaigner. A campaigner brings decades of battle experience to each conflict, leading fellow centaurs with courage and skill. He's just the centaur leader, basically.
He is weird. He can fly.
What?
He can fly.
Okay.
He has an ability called Skybound, and it's a free ability that he can use at will, and he can start flying.
Did he learn from Santa's reindeer?
I'm not kidding. It's just there. It just says.
It is there. I'm looking at it now.
It's like, no, I can fly, so I escape. I fly away.
If you think making your centaur fly is a good idea, then go for it, man. Sure, I guess. And that's it. So hopefully, maybe those guys give you a bit of inspiration for when you're messing around with the stat block for your centaurs. So
yeah, some cool things you could do with them would be the Centaur Hunter, as you mentioned, has an ability called Charger Arrow, which is basically an arrow that deals more damage and also knocks back the person. A cool way to represent that might be something as simple as that if they use their charge ability, so if they move at least 30 feet and they shoot someone with an arrow instead of hitting them with the pike, then maybe that person has to make an athletics check, as if they were being shoved, and if they fail, they fall prone.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And also, like, one of my favorite dailies from 4th edition, which for people who don't know, 4th edition dailies are basically your superpowers that your character gets one per day, and it's like their best attack. But one of my favorite dailies for an archer was Split the Tree, where you shot one arrow at 2 different targets, because it's like the arrow got split in half and it got shot, and it just kind of splits in half and shoots 2 different guys on different sides of each other. Nice. So I think doing something like that for a centaur, if you're going to make like a centaur hunter, I guess, or a special elite centaur, then something like that might be cool, where you just have you get like a special attack where you shoot 1 arrow and it hits 2 guys. So
nice.
There you go.
That's cool. I can imagine the bow would be like where the person is aiming, there's like a knife just kind of clicks out of the bow in front of the arrow, and it just kind of splits it as it goes. That'd be cool.
Yeah, something like that. You can flavor it up whatever way you want.
Yeah.
Cool. So yeah, that's pretty much the stat block though, and more. It's it's one of the small stat blocks that doesn't say too much, but
yeah.
Anything else you gotta say about this before we move on to the next part of the extravaganza of Creature Club?
I don't think so. Nothing that we won't bring up in the final segment. The archer, this archer, probably the centaur hunter, probably seems like the best creature to use if you're looking to inspire your normal centaur hunter, just because it's slightly. It's not weird. It doesn't have weird magic. It can't start flying or whatever.
Yeah, and if you want, and I'd say that, and maybe the Ravager, just like a centaur brute, but it's a little bit boring.
Just sort of a bruiser who has a big sword and stuff like that.
And probably has a lot of health. That would be worth fighting. Like if you wanted your characters to fight a centaur, the berserk is probably the one they're going to fight, because the rest of them seem to be pretty normal foot soldier guys. Maybe the berserker was like left behind by his tribe, and now he's beating people up.
Yeah, you need a berserker on every single for every single monster race, I guess. Like, they all need at least one. Cool. So let's go on to dessert, guys. Let's have our sweet candied apples.
You got
that for dessert? Yeah.
Yeah. I'll have a candied apple.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, let's do that.
I just appreciate that someone made it. That's the
Does it?
thing.
Yeah.
Could I get it with a side of fried carrion crawler?
Oh my god! Still hanging on to that one, aren't you, Tim? Hanging on to that classic
forever.
joke. All right, let's play the music. We got transported to the future.
Sorry.
Future of dessert.
There's a hole in our dessert submarine, and candied apple is just flooding the basement. So
Yeah.
Okay,
we need to bail this out with some cool talking.
So how about this, guys? We have a centaur. We don't really like centaurs too much, but if we were gonna fight some centaurs for our players, what would it be like? Let's do the vanilla first before we get on to the chocolate.
So the main thing about fighting a single centaur, as far as I can tell, is that they can very easily outmaneuver the party, and I think that that's their biggest strength.
Yeah.
If the fight starts to go badly, they can just bolt. And unless the party is very, very quick, like if they have a monk or expeditious retreat or something like that, like a spell, they won't be able to catch the centaur.
Or they're on their horses already, if you're doing
Or they're on
combat.
their horses, which must be weird
Yeah.
for a centaur.
Do you think centaurs have a kinship with horses more than they do with like humanoid races?
No.
No, I don't think so.
No. I mean, no, not really.
Sorry, derailed.
No, it's a good question to ask, but like, I guess I just don't feel like they do.
Yeah,
like,
probably not.
They're, I mean, I think if horses were, well, I guess it depends a lot, actually. Sorry.
Why couldn't it be the other type of centaur with the person part in the bottom and the horse part on top?
Now that's you mean like a BoJack Horseman sort of thing?
Yeah.
Or
Like that's a centaur I could get behind.
Yeah.
Like a horse version of a minotaur.
Yeah, basically.
Oh, yeah.
Or actually, if it was the other way around, it would still have its front legs. So it's like the front legs and head of a horse and torso of a horse where the neck comes out of it. That would be a bizarre looking creature.
It is, yeah, that is. So there's definitely been drawn on the internet, I'd say, but I don't want to look it up.
Yeah.
What are we talking about?
More nightmare fuel. Anyway, sorry. How we would use
we were talking about
Centaurs.
kinship with horses.
Yes.
And the answer, I think, is that it depends a lot on your setting and how you run animals. So if you either don't think about it or kind of go with how we understand animals to work now, the answer is probably not, because horses are just relatively dumb animals. I mean, they're relatively smart in the grand scheme of animals, but they're not as smart as a person. They are leagues away from a person.
Sure.
And from this stat block, we can assume that a centaur is about as smart as a slightly dumb person, because they have a negative intelligence modifier.
Yeah.
So it would be difficult for them to relate to a creature that they can't speak with, or that doesn't seem to act based on any sort of ethical or moral code, which we have learned the centaur is very strongly driven by. However, if you had a setting where, for example, animals sort of have their own relationship with each other and their own understanding of the world, more like the idea that animal noises are like human speech, just in a language we don't understand. Inspiration for that would be something like, something as simple as Tolkien Shadowfax being the lord of all horses. Like, what does that mean? It obviously suggests like a structure, a society in place, so horses must have an intellect understanding of those kind of things. So if you have that sort of system in your world, you're it makes sense that then centaurs would have a kinship.
I like that.
Good way of looking at it.
That's a fantastic answer to a kind of offhanded question, Daniel. Thank you.
No problem. I just thought I'd try to provide some information and even give some people some ideas for thinking about how animals work in their world.
For sure.
Yeah.
Cool.
Okay, so what we were saying before, that was, so a fight with one centaur, he would definitely move around quite a bit, because he's better at moving than your players.
He's better at moving. The centaur is better at moving than the party, is more mobile than the party, and also gets bonuses for moving.
Yeah.
Is rewarded very specifically for moving and hitting creatures. And I think we can reasonably assume that the centaur knows that it deals more damage when it charges someone.
Yeah.
I think that's a
kind of,
it's a kind of a common sense assumption,
and also it's probably like, how they learn to fight, it's kind of in their martial art,
Exactly. There's lots of reasons that they would understand that. They have a multi-attack, which lets them make 2 attacks either way, either with their bow or with their pike and their hooves, so they can attack. So I think based on the damage they deal and the challenge rating they're facing, they could very easily, if they hit often, which they are kind of likely to do, they've got a pretty good to hit bonus. They could down some party members in one attack, or they could kind of spread out the damage. Some of the tougher members of the party would be able to either avoid the damage entirely with their armor, or would have a little more health. But those 2 attacks, the pike and the hooves, they deal 20 damage even without including the charge bonus, so that's 30 damage including the charge. But then that's interesting, because what happens there is the damage is sort of front-loaded, where, as we know from the charge ability, it only adds the damage to the pike. So if the pike attack misses, then the centaur will deal much less damage. Although, interestingly, its hooves actually do more damage than the pike. Its hooves are a 2d6 weapon, while the pike is a 1d10 weapon.
Both +4, so it's both strength-based, so that makes perfect sense. Yeah. I think they're like enough of a threat in their single attack that they could probably take down, like at level 2, even like your tankiest guy in one good hit, like at max damage they are going to do 18 plus 10 28 32 damage at like peak damage, which is enough to probably take out a level 3 or level 4 character if it got its max, so they are a pretty significant threat to an individual person in your party, So if you front load your party with your tank, he's going to take a pretty solid hit.
With that being said, I personally see centaurs, I would probably use them more for a part of a group of centaurs, or just part of a group in general, whatever other things. I probably wouldn't use him by himself, because he's not that interesting by himself. He's not like a carrion crawler where he has like a paralyze ability and that's his thing, or like a basilisk where he can petrify you.
I would totally agree.
He's just a horse guy that can. The charge is pretty cool, but it's not a thing to it's not a thing to sell a fight, to sell one fight, where
Yeah.
so I'll put him in a group of other guys. I wouldn't use him as a sole boss.
For sure.
Oh yeah, I agree. So Centaur on its own is a little straightforward. A Centaur as a group would start to get interesting. We've already gone over in 4th edition all the different Centaur types there are. So we know that if we had a fight with more than one Centaur, we could have one of these Centaurs, which is sort of good in melee, gets a bonus for charging, kind of likes to hit and fade, like, charge someone and then run away and then come back and hit someone else, or, move around the party a bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they're kind of interested in spreading out damage. And maybe we have another Centaur who is sort of a bow expert who's going to try and circle the party and shoot them with arrows and has abilities suitable for that. As you said before, DC, you could swap the strength and dexterity, or just give them a bow bonus, give them a bonus to ranged attacks. But remember that if you do want to swap their strength and dexterity, you are going to also increase the AC of this Centaur, which is going to mean that they're going to be a little harder to hit. Although that's not too bad. You can actually do some fun balancing where you could, strip some of their hit points to give them some cool bow abilities, but you're also going to swap their strength and dex, so they're going to have a little more armor. So they're they're going to have their own resilience.
Another point, I think, with regards to the if you only fight one of these, they're probably only going to be able to use their charge once. Like, if they start from 30 feet away from you and they charge straight at you 30 feet, they only have 20 feet to run away. And then your characters are going to catch up to them, so he won't be able to do his charge a second time if he's by himself. Whereas if there are 2 or more of them, then they can kind of trade off.
Yeah, and also, if it's only one Centaur, your players will kill him in like 2 turns.
Yeah.
You won't get a chance to do it again. Like,
I don't think he stick around to be killed, as Daniel mentioned earlier. He's probably going to fight, realize he's outmatched, and then run the fuck away.
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why one Centaur just doesn't really feel right to me, because it seems like a smart, I don't know why he would want to fight a bunch of humans or a bunch of other races.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm not. But
Yeah, I mean, I was actually thinking that myself. I think actually I would amend my tactics, and I think the Centaur, I think it depends a lot, right? If the Centaur wants to fight the party just to the death, then I think the Centaur is going to harry them. I don't know why. I'm just sort of saying most straightforward fight is just 2 people trying to kill each other.
we can fight to the death.
You and me could rule this city, Spider-Man. So I think in that case, the Centaur will actually harry the party. The Centaur will actually pull back its full movement range and be 50 feet away, and it will fire its arrows constantly.
Yeah.
Because even though it's not as good with its arrows, it is pretty certain that it's a good shot, and it then knows that if the party shoot back, it can run away. Mm-hmm. So, as in if they start hitting it and now it's damaged, it can bolt, and it has the advantage of being both faster and further away than the party. And it would probably only charge if it thought the party were distracted, or if the arrows were taking effect and it thought that it could win, or at least temporarily overwhelm the party by charging them.
Yeah.
Or it might try to, retreat and shoot arrows, and then as the party chase them and they kind of become spread out, then the Centaur might charge someone you don't expect because it can move so fast.
So actually, going back to the group again, if you wanted to make the Mystic, just give him as I said before, give him a bunch of Druid spells. And it'll probably be easy enough to do in 5th edition, or probably crank up the Wisdom, I'd say, if you want to make him the Mystic and the Chieftain or the Shaman or whatever. Definitely crank up that Wisdom score so he can actually use the spells effectively. So instead of what does he have? 13?
He has 13, so it's just a +1 at the moment.
Yeah, maybe make it 15 for +2 or something. So.
Yeah. How do you think? Could probably maintain his strength and maybe kill his dex a little bit if he's the wizened old mage of the Centaurs or something, just to kind of balance it out if you want to maintain a level table of stats.
The other thing about Centaurs, which is always something I feel a little bit about monsters of this type, and it's kind of a so the Centaur, as you said, DC, the Centaur on its own isn't a very interesting fight, but the weird kind of problem with that, and this isn't necessarily a real problem, but it is sort of it's an unusual feature, is that the Centaur is CR2, and so you kind of want to fight a group, but as soon as you start adding more centaurs, the CR starts to go up really fast. Like if
Yeah.
it's just 3 centaurs, that's apparently a CR 6 fight. Like that's a tough fight for a level 5 party, for example. And then you're like, well, wait, why are my level 5 parties still fighting centaurs? Why are my level 10 parties still just fighting more centaurs? So like so I almost feel like what you could very reasonably do is get this stat line and keep the charge because it's cool, and then maybe keep the multi-attack, but drop half its hit dice to 3, and more like have weaker centaurs individually, but then you're allowed, you feel more comfortable having fights with lots of centaurs. Because I think straight away that's going to make the fight way more interesting.
Yeah, so they'll deal as much damage, but they'll take much less. That's fair.
Like, well, yeah, they'll just be lower elf monsters. I mean, like, for comparison, right? The very first monster we covered, the Aarakocra, is I think a CR half or CR quarter monster. So even though the Aarakocra isn't a super interesting fight on its own, it's so relatively straightforward and easy to fight that you feel comfortable adding a lot of them to a fight. And then the puzzle is not defeat my centaur. The puzzle is there are 8 centaurs and they're going to fight you all in different ways. Which is a much more exciting fight. Like, some of them are going to use bows. One or two of them might have magic. The rest of them might be like interested in charging you with broadswords, or they might kind of stick back and use their spears to poke you while keeping you out of range. And immediately, like, it's a very different fight. It's much more tactical.
Our fight with this is basically how to like balance out a fight with your characters, essentially. Like, it's not significant in any way apart from like you're fighting a centaur. Like, it has its one special thingy that it's going to be able to do, but even that isn't particularly incredible, Yeah.
So
Or how about have this just a quick idea? Give him a magic item. Give him a magic weapon.
Yeah. Perfect.
That'd be a bit of fun.
Nice
If you
little
wanted,
loot drop.
if you wanted to fight like, if you wanted to have
hey,
fight
slippers
like,
of spider climb. 4 of them.
excellent.
That's 2 pairs for us.
Or like horseshoes a spider climb, so give them to your horse. That would be great to see you riding your horse up a wall.
It's like in
like in
Oblivion,
Skyrim.
where you could make a spell
Or
to
Oblivion.
touch your horse and give it water walk and then ride it across the lake.
Or just the Skyrim horses in general, where they just walk up a mountain.
They just do whatever they want, yeah.
And that's in the game. But if you want, you can like level 1 party, you can fight 1 centaur, give him a cool magic item, like a magic sword or somehow, and then change up the fight. I'm thinking, I don't know, maybe like a flying sword or something, or I don't know, name a cool magic weapon, guys.
I think so. Yeah. So I think the conclusion is that the centaur isn't necessarily. It's like the other monstrous humanoids we've covered.
Yeah.
In that you should probably try to embrace their culture when you're trying to look for ways to make them interesting, because they're fundamentally just people with probably one weird ability. In this case, they can move fast and they can kick you really good. So let's talk a little bit about like centaur kind of wildlife and ecology and societies and how they integrate into our world. So
I think would make sense. So if your party did encounter this one guy and he runs off and you talk to, whatever town you were originally going to, you could talk to their wise man or their kind of historian or whatever, and they'll say, oh, centaurs, they're back. Like, this would be like, it's a nice starting poke to get a little bit of world building in for yourself.
That's a good moment for the title drop of your campaign to happen. Like, centaurs, they're back. And then like the return of centaurs just smashes onto the screen.
Yeah.
Continue, please.
I think that's probably the only way. Like, they're probably not going to have very like identifying like symbols or like sigils on their person, and their weapons aren't probably going to be particularly like recognizable. They're just going to be the centaurs, and someone is going to remember a couple decades ago when they went the other direction, but now they're like, well, we had problems with them when they went that way, but we've rebuilt and we're kind of prepared for them now. But maybe they're a little worried about what has happened up wherever they were going, that they're coming back.
And that's a great setup for the sort of kind of adventure we discussed before, where the players can act as intermediaries between these two conflicting tribes.
Yes.
And both tribes are fundamentally good or at least neutral people who just don't want to fight because they might get injured and die. So it's much more about coming to an effective compromise between these two cultures. Here's the thing, though. Here's something I'd like us to do. Centaur culture is boring. Let's make a new one. Let's make them interesting. Let's do something with them that makes them exciting and different. And like, instead of trying to recuperate the boring book Centaur, let's make a cool Centaur that kicks ass and scares people.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know if this will be our cool Centaur idea, but what if we had a Centaur civilization that was not nomadic? It was actually like in an urban setting, where it's just a bunch of centaurs in a city, which is also a good idea for a TV show. Centaurs.
How do they sit down?
Exactly. Actually, that's another thing. But
or
I don't
maybe
know. It might actually be stupid. But
no, maybe the city that they originated in is like the only city that is built to the proportions of a centaur. Like, it's the only place with places where they could quite comfortably and reasonably sit down. Daniel,
just bales of hay.
No. It is, but like, it's interesting because like I think when you talk about like Centaur cities, it's almost more like something out of Star Wars. I want to say, or maybe Star Wars is a bad example. Maybe Star Trek is closer, but that idea. So the thing about Centaur cities, and the reason that as soon as you go a Centaur city, you kind of go, wait, isn't that really weird? It's because Centaurs are people on top, but they're horses on bottom. So a lot of their society has to be built around that. So it would be almost like exploring an alien city for a group of two-legged players.
Yeah.
Because everything is really tall but like thin, and it's built for like everything would have really high ceilings, and there would be lots of room for people to stand around. Like, all the rooms would be larger basically because like centaurs just take up more room than people, and all the streets would be much wider, and the avenues would be wider, and the alleyways would be wider. There probably wouldn't be doors. There might be the doors you get on like saloons in Wild West films.
Yeah.
the shutter door kind of thing.
Yeah, basically.
I immediately regret this idea though, because I still don't like centaurs.
They're pretty doofy.
Yeah.
But okay, so let's make a badass centaur. What do we like about them? What's the things that we like about them?
Horses are cool and awesome metaphorical symbolic animals. So let's double down on that, I think.
Yeah, okay.
So I'm thinking we ran into some weird stuff in the 4E monster manual.
That's what I want to get into in a minute.
I think we double down on that idea. I think we make it so that centaurs are, so if I recall correctly, horses were made in Greek myth by Poseidon, god of the sea. He made the horses out of the ocean waves. So maybe we do something like that where where centaurs have some sort of creation myth to do with being like born from the storm, right? Because we have this idea of thundering hooves and lightning damage and all that stuff. So let's kind of really play into that, and let's make the centaurs. Let's double down on their kind of eco-friendly message and just make them bioterrorists. Let's just make them. They're like all of civilization is a blight upon nature. Let's get rid of it. So
I think a good kind of stamp to kind of put them on would be to make a similar tiered structure to the giants, maybe, because you have storm giants and they're right at the top, right? So if you have like storm centaurs, but then at the bottom you have like hill centaurs who are just the kind of dum-dums, essentially, like the workhorses or the laborers, and then you have the rest of the structure, because it is built on the kind of higher ups, the closer to the skies, the more powerful thunderclouds, that kind of thing. And then like a storming horde of these incredible centaurs will have like a storm cloud following them as they charge down a hill. Like they could have a mythology in world that is absolutely terrifying. You know, these massive armored horsey people.
I can picture like the leader of the centaurs being called like Storm Rider.
Oh, that's rad.
That's a cool name.
Yeah. Well, it's official. We're better writers than Wizards of the Coast.
We're better writers than mythology.
Even though we're taking their ideas and putting them in different places.
You could also, you could place the centaurs in the world in such a place like, do you remember the planes in Final Fantasy X where the lightning bolts would drop on you just all the time?
Yes, the thunder planes.
Okay, the Thunder Plains.
I remember there's a mini game in it where if you want to get the ultimate weapons in that game,
Oh,
you have
yes.
to dodge the lightning in like 200 times consecutively. You have to dodge lightning. You have to like press a button at the right time and the right rhythm, and then you dodge the lightning, and you do that 200 times in a row, and you get the magic item. I did it recently, and I don't know. That was something. But continue, Daniel.
So the Centaurs could be from a place like that, somewhere where like there's this constant thunderstorm brewing. Maybe it's like nestled in a range of mountains, and it's obviously too dangerous for normal people because of the constant lightning storms. But these centaurs are kind of raised by the lightning, and they train with it all the time, which is where they get their like battle reflexes and their skill at fighting. And maybe the strongest centaurs like can try to tame or even like wrestle the lightning out of the sky, right? That's kind of a cool idea. And as they do, they gain more power. They gain like greater influence in society. Like the most powerful kind of lightning tamers in centaur society are the leaders, and they also get maybe cool like lightning magic that sort of accentuates their existing abilities. So lightning arrows, calling down storms on people, all that cool
and
stuff.
maybe they have these like fractal like burns across their skin. Like the more fractals that a person has from wrestling all this lightning, the more impressive they are.
Yeah, that's cool. I like that. Something that's like immediately visually obvious, both to other centaurs and to the party.
These guys are instantly cooler now when you say wrestle with lightning. But I can picture that, because I remember with the Centaur campaigner, they flew around, but I can picture that like this Centaur that we're making flying around like the Behir with like the lightning thing.
Yeah.
The Behir from 4th edition. It's actually not in this book, but
Yes,
the Behir
I
kind of
remember that.
shoots out lightning and rides that lightning like Metallica.
Yeah.
And
Just like Metallica did on that one tour.
yeah, exactly. They rode lightning. But yeah, I can picture like the Centaur kind of, because they use the magic, and like the most talented of the Centaurs can actually like of course fly using lightning. So there we go.
Yeah, and if you don't want to give them a fly speed they can use in battle, a really cool thing you could do is basically have themselves that they can fly, but they're like horizontal lightning bolts.
Yeah.
So they sort of just leap in a direction and land somewhere.
Right, yeah.
And it's kind of imprecise. It's almost like, you remember when Superman was first released, they said like leap tall buildings in a single bound. That idea that like you're not flying, you're just super jumping. So you could have something like that where they're just like firing themselves off the ground, basically.
Yeah, you're falling with style.
Classic.
Yeah, these Centaurs are cool, actually. I like these ones.
Yeah, they're much more interesting. I think it's a better history to give them, but I think it again is a little bit reflective of the old giants. But it is, I think, legally distinct. So I think it's a very cool idea.
I don't really, spoilers, guys. I don't really actually like giants too much.
No.
Yeah.
Well, we have to go through all 5 of them.
Yeah, don't worry.
Let's make the centaurs like the giants, and make the giants like the centaurs. So we'll make the giants all nomads.
They've got hippopotamus butts, and that's what they move. They got 4 hippopotamus legs.
Hippopotamus butts. Yeah. Not sure. We'll talk about giants when we get there.
Yes, indeed.
When we get to G.
Yeah.
That's a far away. God. How long have we been doing this podcast for?
We have been doing this podcast
over an
for
hour.
about 3 months.
Oh boy.
I think you meant I thought you meant
Current
the
episode or
series.
podcast in general?
No, the podcast in general.
Oh, right.
Yeah, we've been doing this episode for 3 months.
Well,
it's been
actually almost
3
6
months.
It's actually almost 6 months now.
Yeah, actually, that sounds right. Sorry, yeah. It came out, our first episode was November, if I recall correctly.
Okay. Wow. Cool.
Yeah, good as go.
Right.
So shall I go through the player race?
Sure.
Oh, yeah.
I'll go through it real quick. So, first of all, if a player went up to me and asked to play a Centaur, I would say, honestly, I'd say feck off. But if you are not like me and you want to play a Centaur, then you can use the homebrew one it's on D&D Beyond right here. I send it to the guys so they can read it too, but I can't send it to you guys. But let's have a look. Ability score increase. Your strength score increases by 2, and your wisdom score increases by 1. So, yeah, makes sense with the monster stat here. Age. Centaurs reach adulthood in their mid-teens and live less than a century. So, that's kind of... I actually didn't know that. That's kind of a strange one.
relatively similar to humans.
Oh,
basically.
oh yeah. I always thought they're kind of like a fey, elvish kind of kind of thing. But yeah, all right. But alignment, they're typically neutral good, and a lot of stuff about centaurs. But yeah, we'll leave it at that. Size, centaurs are between 7 and 8 feet tall and weigh between 1,400 and 2,100 pounds. And your size is medium, which is kind of weird because no, a horse isn't medium, and a centaur in the monster manual is not medium. I guess it's kind of making you like the rest of the characters.
Above all the stats, there's a very brief statement by whoever designed this that says it's basically they didn't mimic everything from the monster manual because it's supposed to capture the essence of the fantasy of the centaurs, while meanwhile staying true to the monster manual and certain conventions for playable races. And if I feel like if you have to work that hard to make them playable, that like it might just be the case that they're just I don't want to. I think you can play whatever you like fundamentally, but I also think
I get you. If you want to play a centaur, then you like it. You can be large if you want because it's like that's fine.
I would agree. I'd just probably make someone large because it doesn't really make any difference.
It makes
in 5th edition, as far as I know.
Your base walking speed is 50 feet. Makes sense with
you got that good fast speed.
Yeah, the regular centaur. You can speak Sylvan, Elvish, and Common, same as centaur, but you speak Common.
Yeah, exactly. So then you have this weird ability.
Yeah, go for it.
Quadruped. So you have 4 legs. You have disadvantage on athletics and acrobatics checks to try to climb things, which makes sense because you can't like climb a sheer wall with 4 legs nearly as easily. And your form requires you to use barding armor, which is more expensive. If you guys don't know, barding is horse armor or armor for any mount. The player's handbook says that all barding is 4 times more expensive than the normal amount. Ooh. So, in other words, you're going to pay 4 times as much for any armor you want.
I'm just picturing like the rest of the party climbing up the wall, and then they would like tie up the centaur with like a pulley,
they basically
like
have
a pulley system.
A pulley.
Yeah.
Okay. Natural cavalry. You may serve as a mount for a single creature, but what about Hooves of Fury? What about Hooves of Fury? It's so important.
Nobody has nobody read Hooves of Fury? Am I just an idiot for assuming that?
Have millennials not read Hooves of Fury? Why aren't millennials? So yeah, you can serve as a mount for a single creature your size or smaller. So obviously because you're medium, they're saying you can let other medium creatures ride you, which is not how the rules normally work. Normally you can only use creatures as a mount if they are a size larger than you. So I would say this is kind of all evidence that maybe they should have just been large, but maybe that doesn't work. I guess it doesn't mean you're really big in terms of battles, but that's not that important. When you do so, you always act independently of your rider. I mean, I would hope so. You also count as mounted at all times for the purposes of equipment. Yeah, fair enough. So if you have like the spear of the horse master, then like you can use it or whatever.
Cool. Centaur weapon training. You have a proficiency in javelins, spears, pikes, longbows, and shields. There you go. That's really it. Charge. It's the same charge as the monster stat.
No,
is that right? Is it a bit different? It's a bit different.
So it's your first attack, your first melee weapon attack using strength, which is the same conditions as the barbarian's rage. You make against that target has advantage. So you don't get more damage, you get more likelihood to hit, which is probably better for player characters anyway.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit better to give player characters the advantage than more damage. Just kind of less things to keep track of. But
well, the other thing is that one of the reasons advantage is such a cool mechanic is that it is as relevant for a level 1 character as a level 20 character.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
Because it's you roll twice and take the higher. So regardless of the situation, you're always going to win. Whereas dealing 10 extra damage is great when you're a CR2 monster, but when you're like a CR15, barbarian, 10 extra damage is like nothing. Okay, fine.
The next ability is the powerful build. You count as 1 size larger when determining your carrying capacity and the weight you can push, drag, or lift, which is basically lending itself to the idea of just like a
that
workhorse.
It should be bigger kind of thing.
Big strong boy.
And like the Goliath and the other guy has it.
Yeah.
All the sort of big creatures basically. Mm-hmm. And then you want to read the last one there, Tim?
Sure. Hooves. Your hooves are natural weapons, which you can use to make unarmed strikes. If you hit with it, you deal bludgeoning damage equal to 1d6 plus your strength modifier, which is you're just pelting them with your hooves.
Just kicking them.
Yeah, give them a good
which
kick.
Is pretty good.
Yeah,
it's fine. I mean, it's as good as some
I think it's a
playable
little
race, I
bit
don't
better
know.
than most natural weapons when it's an unarmed strike. Like I think that's as good as level. I think it's a level 3 spell, the alter self. Oh no, it's level 2 alter self spell for the old sorcerers or whoever uses it, where they can make themselves have claws to be effective.
Okay.
Yeah.
I suppose the thing is, I think some creatures get a D4 natural attack, but you do have to remember that this guy has the quadruped, which is all disadvantage.
Yes.
Like it's disadvantage on checks, and your armor is more expensive, so it's kind of a way to make up for that.
Balancing
Your
act.
kicks are a little better.
Yeah.
Yeah, kind of.
And that's the Centaur player race.
Absolutely.
There you go.
Maybe
Yeah.
that's the whole centaur. So, what do you think, guys? Centaurs, yay or nay?
I just don't really care about them.
Yeah, neither do I.
No.
I probably still
No,
won't.
not really.
I don't think I'll ever put them in my game, to be
Yeah.
honest with you.
Me neither. But
Like I think if I had centaurs, I would either use a tribe of centaurs for some sort of conflict. I'd probably do something to make them more interesting, or I'd have a single centaur as part of a existing traveling community.
yeah,
Because one of the things that did actually bother me from this weirdly long 2 paragraphs about them settling is that they never take into account the idea that centaurs might be left behind by tribes of centaurs, but there are plenty of traveling communities in medieval times. There are circuses and merchants and like amongst all the other races of the world, there's going to be people who are other nomads. Like even just nomadic civilizations that don't want to settle down. And I thought it was so weird that they never said that like centaurs would actually favor them, because that seemed so obvious to me.
yeah,
Of course, a centaur would rather keep traveling. It's in their nature. Or if it's not in their nature, it's in their culture. So they've grown, they've lived, 15 years traveling with this tribe. And then one day they get injured and they get left behind. It would be unusual that they would decide, oh, I'm going to stay in this one shitty village for 80 years until I die, rather than like just sticking around until the merchant's like, oh yeah, we're leaving town. And, even just spots a caravan leaving and just tags along.
Yeah.
Like other people did back then, which is how you got from town to town, because there's safety in numbers. And then when the centaur arrives in the next town, it does the same thing, because again, it wants to keep moving. And if it gets lucky, it runs into some group who are always traveling, and then it never has to settle because it doesn't want to.
yeah.
And that's it. I just thought that, I honestly thought it was weird that it wasn't in this paragraph. Like it wasn't
Yeah.
anywhere in there. The idea that they would want to keep traveling.
Well, that's definitely a good way to use them.
So like your party run into a traveling circus, and one of the people in the circus is a centaur who can do cool horse tricks or whatever, can do cool horse acrobatics, because it's a circus centaur.
Horse skateboarding.
Horse skateboarding,
Horse rollerblading.
horse gymnastics, or dressage.
Dressage.
I guess.
Dressage. Shall we leave it at that, guys? Because we're kind
I
of
think so.
on at the time.
Yes. Do we want to monster hunter this monster?
No,
I don't think so.
No. We shouldn't.
No, it's another one of those 2 human ones.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks everybody for listening on whatever device you have. We would appreciate if you could leave us a review on iTunes, or just hit a like button wherever there might be a like button, or recommend us to your friends who like listening to podcasts. We like to think we're kind of a casual listening kind of thing, like maybe take notes while you're listening, but we like to keep it cool
People
here,
take notes.
We're your friends. We want
I don't take notes. We have a website, creatureclubpodcast.com. You can go on there. You can comment below the episode, or you can use a contact us form to get in touch. We also have a Gmail, an email, one of those things, which is creatureclubpodcast@gmail.com. You can send us your homebrews or just your feedback, whatever you want. It's on my phone. I'm always checking it because it's just there. I mean, that's the future, man. That's the social media,
You can bug Daniel at work. That's what we always advertise.
I think that's all of our housekeeping.
Yeah.
Oh, we got some homebrews from friend of the podcast and friend full stop Stephen Brady, who actually did send us a Centaur homebrew.
Oh, nice.
Which we could have done, but I think we should probably save them.
Yeah.
I feel like I even though it is related, I would prefer to do a big like
Homebrew
bonus
episode.
super sized homebrew episode that's just all homebrews.
Yeah.
Especially because the cool thing there is that the more ground we cover, the more we can look back.
And yeah, I think we said all the stuff.
Cool.
See you next time, guys. And we will be talking about the Chimera, another classic monster from classical mythology. I'm looking forward to that one because I've always liked chimeras. But
if you have strong opinions about the Centaur, seriously, get in touch because we just don't care.
yeah,
We're just very indifferent.
you're gonna say if you have strong opinions about the Centaur, don't at me.
Yeah, keep them to yourself.
Do the opposite.
Yeah, do at us. Do at
Absolutely. Change our minds.
us.
Yeah, exactly.
Tell us about centaurs and why they're cool. Why you think they are. Like that's
Or if you've played a centaur, tell us how it was not being able to sit down and always having to sleep in the stables.
Yeah.
You know?
cool. Well, anyways, thanks, guys. See you next week. I have been Mikey.
I've been Tim.
And I've been Dan.
Stay cool.